So we're back. Are you able to listen to me for another hour or something? I don't know if I can listen to this. You know, here's the good news. If for any reason I lose steam or I keel over, I've done this presentation several times to folks in this room. So Stella, where's Stella? Is my standby. Yvonne, they've heard it before. So we have people who can take it through the slides, yeah? So we have backup here. That's knowledge transfer. There's Stella. That's knowledge transfer, yeah? So we have backups, yeah? So we've seen there's these four parts, these four pillars as I call it, for local content implementation. And I'll go through three of those around building capacity in individuals, secondly building capacity in companies, and then third, around capturing value in other parts of the chain. Since I'm not an academic, I won't follow the instructions specifically as set out by Melba, but I do give you examples that I think might get you to the answers you're looking for. Probably not as rigorously as you wanted to, but more practically. Yeah. So, I've said this a couple of times. In assessing or determining what you want to do in building capacity, whether it's in people or in companies, and where you go, what you do, there's a series of steps you have to go through. You have to understand the market, understand demand, understand what you have, understand what gaps are, find ways to close those gaps. And find ways to close those gaps that give you the most impact on what you want to do. Yeah? So very simply, and this is not rocket science, this is things you will think of intuitively. If Kenyans wanted to participate in the oil and gas sector in some area of skill or service, the question you'd ask is, so what is the opportunity? What is the, if I want to get into manufacturing, right? And to produce something out of some natural resource. What is the resource base? If I want to do something with land, what is the asset like? I have to analyze the opportunity, in other words, yeah? And then, simple questions, how big is it? How long is it going to last? You know, how difficult is it to get in? So the things that people have to ask to say, should I take the risk and get into that? And if you wanted to get into some other business, any kind of business, you look at what are the conditions from a legal, technical, and commercial perspective. If I wanted to provide, in this case, goods and services, I would ask, so, what are the things these companies are doing? What are the actual goods and services they need? Again, how many of these things do they need? For how long? You know, when do they actually need it? Is there a continuous demand or is it broken up? Things like that, yeah, are the standards I need to meet. So you ask questions. You ask questions to give you a handle on what is it I'm going into. And the only way you can get answers to those questions is if information is available in a way you can use and understand it. And therein lies the problem. Because the industry is so complex, because there's so much data and it's so involved, the easiest way to communicate it is to aggregate it and put lots of small things into big things. That does not work for unsophisticated markets. Big companies, I can tell the big company that we have a 5-rig program over the next 20 years in Kenya, and those rigs could drill anywhere between 100 to 300 wells. How do I gear for that? As a small company, I have no idea what that means. What do these error margins mean? What should I put in place? Or what contingency should I have? Big companies have done this time and time again. Plus, they have other markets, other resources they can tap into. So they don't need to bring all the resources into Kenya at one time. They can move them around the global marketplace. So getting data for small companies is different to the way big oil companies normally deal with data and their markets. So it really requires a step change in the behavior. Now, Tullow had a moment in time where they were new on the ground, didn't have legacy suppliers, businesses, ways of doing things. So they had choices to make. They can reinvent it to meet the markets they were in, Ghana, Kenya, Uganda, or do it the way they're accustomed to doing it. But by the idea, the people they have. They did what is the right business decision. Do things that we know work. But on occasion, they were trying to do things differently. And that's why people like Suzanne was pulling her hair out. You know, the guys are doing things one way, and I wish they do it differently. You know, she wouldn't tell me this, but that's how it is. You always have to change the way you're working if you want to get a new outcome from the same situation. So information is critical to investment decision making, whether it's investing in people or in businesses. That isn't easily available. Information as to the supply chain is also difficult to get. So there was a study on the supply and demand baseline that was done as part of the CAPTAP program. And I had a look at that. I saw a piece of it as a presentation. And I didn't seem to have quite the level of detail I would have hoped to see if I were trying to do a market analysis. I don't know why this has gone green. But in any case, in addition to the demand side, there must be analysis of the demand side. And that information as to the capabilities, the quality, the numbers, have to be out there. And then the gap between what is desired and what is there is what is used to build capacity. And to do that, then you have to make choices. So where do I start? Where do I focus? Which are the most important ones, most impactful ones? Which one are closest to others? Those are the kinds of questions we have to ask. And those have to then factor in, if you're looking at the Kenya situation, which ones of those skills and services can support other national sectors, other economic sectors. So that will factor into your priorities. Those are not different to any kind of strategy development. You do it anywhere, you do it the same way. And of course, with any kind of implementation, you must make sure you have the systems in place to govern it. So what I've described here is something intuitively we all know we have to do. The difference is that the detail isn't so readily available. The detail exists, but it's not accessible. Yeah? So how do I interrogate the supply chain? What's available? I can tell you what I had to do in Trinidad when I was doing this. We had a whole number of engineering firms registered with the engineering board. Engineers. We went to the engineering board and asked, who are your registered engineers? Then we went to each company, knocked on the door, and said, can you tell us what capabilities you have? How many engineers? What experience? How many are male, female? What technology do you have? What experience do you have? And we got access to that because this was a project being done for a big multinational company who wanted to use local companies' goods and services. And that was the incentive. That was incentives. That was the incentive. Unless you're in the database, you don't get access. We can't access you. So we got the information. It took a lot of work. We analyzed the supply chain, and then we aggregated it. And we looked at what are the inputs in engineering for building a platform? What do we have in country? And when we put it side by side, we had everything it takes in country already, except it was disaggregated. It was in many small companies. Now you talk about joint ventures, and you think that will help you with getting capability built in Kenya. Have you thought about joint ventures among local companies? Do you know how difficult that is? The value and impact of locals participating together is tremendous, but it's very difficult in a market where people are accustomed competing with each other to now collaborate. How do you do that? If you can crack that nut, you've gone a long way. And again, it comes back to what is the incentive? The prize. How do you design the joint venture? And it's happening in Trinidad. We have companies collaborating, not always. So that detail really takes walking the streets, knowing what questions to ask. And we didn't go there as a geologist. We got experience of engineers to ask these questions. We found an engineer who done this for companies for years and said, can you help us this? Do you design a survey? Not only that, interview the people. Because the nuance that comes out in an interview is significant. You can't capture everything in an interview sheet. So you send some economists, lawyers, high-skilled people with a template to do a survey. They will get the survey, but they won't get the information. You'll get some data, and there's a difference between information and data. Yeah? So keep that in mind. If you're trying to do a survey, if you want to get information, make sure the person asking the questions has the ability to ask follow-on questions. Otherwise, you don't get the nuance that's so important. So, what are we doing this for? How and why? Actually, our goal, we're trying to, and I said it before, local content is not an end unto itself. It's to support national economic development. Yeah? And if you're doing that from oil and gas, exploration and production, you have to ask the question, what is the resource base we're talking about? Is it 750 million barrels or 1.4 billion barrels? Is it 100,000 barrels a day production or 300,000 barrels per day? That tells you the level of activities that's going to take place. The level of activities is significant in terms of the demand. Yeah? How the fields will be developed in time, in space, also tells you where you want the distribution of services in time and in space. You need to understand that. And that from that, you get your, what is the demand for which goods, which services, when. And then you use that demand and combine with the supply, and out of that, you get the capacity gap. And then you say, aha, now how do I close that gap? In people and in businesses. And I'll show you kind of how we did that in some areas. But an important part we tend to ignore is that local businesses cannot participate unless they have access to financing. And in our, well, Trinidad is doing quite well relatively, but in many jurisdictions in Africa, for instance, the cost of borrowing is so high, is not competitive. And that's why Ghana and Nigeria, for instance, have created these local content funds. Part of it is to give access to financing at competitive rates. Because just going to the bank just doesn't cut it. Okay? That's another thing we have to do, and it's something I wish we could mind ourselves. If we don't engage the banks early, they will be behind the curve. So we're getting suppliers ready, and we need to get the supporters ready. So we have to understand that whole landscape, who the participants are, what their roles are, how we can help them get ready for their roles. So there's a piece about the stakeholder mapping that we've started, and we need to get more into that, and understand how we get all those stakeholders enrolled. Yeah? So let me give you some definitions around capacity building. Because we use terms, and sometimes we don't have a common understanding of what those terms are. So these are picked up some, and you can change them, but give a general sense. So what is capability? Whether it's an institution, an organization, an individual. It's developing the ability of those to fit into appropriate challenges, assignments, and job positions. In other words, the ability to do what is needed. Yeah? Now, there's another characteristics we describe, which is called competency. And competency really speaks about three characteristics. One is the capability, the ability to do the job. But that capability comes with two dimensions. What you've learned to do through training, and what you've actually done, and what experience you have. So, because you've learned to do something, it doesn't mean you know how to do it efficiently, safely. And that leads to the third dimension, which is the behaviors. So you can take a very good diesel mechanic who works on the best buses and cars and turns them out really well, and take him offshore. He doesn't have the same safety behavior, he hasn't worked around explosive devices, he doesn't know the environment, he doesn't have the culture, he doesn't have the same checks and balances in terms of how you go about doing your work. So that's an important part. So when people say they're certified, you have to ask, what are the competencies you're certified in? There are also other dimensions of competency that are useful in coming up with knowledge transfer. Because one of the things that challenges us is how we use expatriates to transfer skills. Because again, another law you would have is one concerning work permits. And it will say invariably that you will use local skilled people unless you can prove there's nobody locally available to do it. And then you apply for a work permit. I don't know if that's the case here in Kenya, but that's a general sense, yeah? And in addition, having got a work permit, that person must transfer his or her skills to a local, right? Now, that is so broad-based that it's practically unimplementable in many places, right? What I've seen work in different places is you don't say, after a year, you become my clone. That's practically impossible. In fact, it's impossible. So you say, what we do, we advertise a job and say, this is the job description. This is what that person is doing. And we use that person's CV to describe the requirements. But in fact, what the industry does, the industry has, for all the disciplines, commercial, geological, engineering, something called competency maps. And a competency map says, if I'm going to be a geological interpreter, to come up with prospects to drill, I have to have learned sedimentology, basin history, structural geology. I have to have learned using systems of geophysical workstations. I have to have done these kinds of projects with these kinds of roles. So I've had this training, this experience, and in these roles that I have to play different types of team roles, different behaviors. So every individual tends to have a competency map, which determines where they are in their career, and it also allows them to understand what they need to do to move forward. And these maps, like in the 80s when the companies outsourced, companies did this kind of stuff internally. And then they outsourced this to companies like Petroleum, RDC, and they offer these things. If you're a member of the Society of Petroleum Engineers, you get free access to it. The American Association of Petroleum Geologists, you get free access to it. So these are tools that are available. Companies do this for their people. Governments don't do it for the country. You don't have a sense of the competencies you need. You know, it's difficult. It is, yeah? And then you can effectively use a work permit. You can say, this guy is coming in. This is the job he's doing. These are the competencies required for this job. Here are some locals who actually need some of those competencies developed. So let me assign one so they can work with him to improve their competency in A. Let this person work with him to improve his competency in B. Now that's very nuanced, very detailed. It's hard work. Can a regulator cause that to happen? The good news is this, all this stuff is now automated. It's all computerized. All you need is a dashboard to fill that data in and have a lot of that stuff easy to do. The good news with Kenya is that you don't have legacy systems in place. You have to break down and rebuild. You don't have organizations that will have territory to protect. You can create new systems. You can create new procedures. You can create a world-class regulatory institution that is working with world-class companies in a world-class way. And what does that do? It suddenly puts a beacon on a government agency that is, wow, these guys are doing this. This agency will say, I want to be like that. You know, you can actually create a hub or a beacon of good governance because you have nothing to break down, you know? So think about that. When you think about local content, improving capacity, improving the companies, you can actually also, if done well, improve governance, you know? So don't, you know, if this is too far-fetched, if it's not far-fetched enough, I'm not stretching you enough. I think there's a lot we can do. Why is this opening? I think there's some ghost in my computer. So, that's what I want to leave you with. I want to tell you that if I were to figure out what local value addition is, I would say it's a combination of all the things we described. Local content, capacity building. Why is capacity building? Earlier on I said capacity development is a precursor to local content. How can it now be value added? Because the capacity you build allows you to have local content and may also allow you to do other things in the community, in the country. So it adds to that. Now, it also includes equity participation. As you know, equity participation allows you to get profits and participate in decision making. I'll talk a bit about that. And then the downstream. So there are many bits and pieces that go into this notion of local value added. That if we're really interested in it, we have to target them, identify them, find ways to go after them, target them, and make sure we get them. So it's not straightforward. Yeah? So we're going to build skills. We're going to develop people. What do? Send them on a course. Make sure they get a certificate. It's more than that. If we're looking at competencies, we must make sure they, one, get the necessary training, two, get the experience, and that experience goes with coaching, mentoring. So there's a whole ecosystem around capacity building that we have to consider. Now, is there anywhere in this CAPTAP program, these programs we have, a notion of mentoring, of coaching? How are you bringing in all these new people in these new institutions and expecting them to develop without access to a hand to hold? There's a lot of pieces that go in there. Companies develop people using all these tools. We have to think that if we have these companies in our midst and we can learn from them, let's use what we learn. Yeah? One of the things that benefited me a whole lot in my generation is that we had cross postings. As an employee in the Ministry of Petroleum Mines, I worked with project teams in the oil companies. I didn't just go there to get a desk. You get a real task to fulfill. But you had people who had experience who were there to help you. Again, you had databases, you had knowledge systems, you had the things that you needed. We didn't always have them in the ministry, but the companies had them. So that cross-posting was very, very effective. One of the things we had from time to time, but not enough of, is people with experience coming and sitting in the ministry and working on a project and working on a team. And that was so valuable. In fact, in Trinidad, in the late 70s, early 80s, in my early career, what happened is that because the oil price was high, we were finding and looking for new oil and spending money for it. And we were discovering new techniques in geophysics, new ways to look at the geology, understanding our geological setting differently. And we found world-leading experts, people who wrote the textbooks on it, to come and teach a class to all the geologists and all the companies and in the ministry. And then we'd have a project waiting to use that with data we had on board. And that person would stay for a couple of months, 3 months, work that project with the people in the state company, and the people in the ministry would work alongside them. So you get the knowledge, the training you need, but you get the practice using it. And as we all know, training is most effective if you use it immediately after you get it. We tend to treat training as ticking a box. I've done that course. So all these things have to come together to get an effective training program. And again, like I said, the industry does it well. So in my time in the companies, I had a personal development plan. On that plan was a progression to where I wanted to go. Along that path were the competencies I needed. Along that path were the experiences and training I needed. And then with my mentor, we decided what would happen when, so we can get the benefit of timing. Yeah? So that's the kind of things the companies do. One of the things we discover, we find is that we tend to think that research is just esoteric thing, that only done in fancy laboratories with lots of equipment. Actually, there's so much information that we don't use because we think of research as coming to a PhD. Literally, what you're trying to do is do your work better. And what we have not done is design a way to capture the learnings we have. Let me give you an example of that. I mentioned Trinidad and Tobago is an old oil industry. We've been drilling for a long time. Trinidad sits at the boundary of 3 tectonic plates. For those of you who don't know, the Earth's surface consists of tectonic plates. Some in the ocean, some on the continents. And they're always moving. And when they move and they collide, you get earthquakes, you get faults, you get all kinds of things. You got volcanoes too, right? So we have 3 plates. So that is as bad as it gets, geologically. So it's very complex. So the rocks and the earth are deformed, folded over time, things are moved. So literally, as a geophysicist, I am investigating 4 dimensions: horizontal, vertical, lateral, and temporal time. Things would have changed at one point and then changed later on. So it's very difficult geology. It means that the rocks that contain the oil are very disrupted and sometimes hard to get to. Sometimes when you drill into the earth, pressure increases gradually. But if pressure in a rock is high, and that rock is pushed up, it means you go into a high pressure suddenly because the pressure is retained in the rock. You go back to a low pressure. That is very dangerous for drilling. So because of those difficulties, our drillers in Trinidad became world-renowned in drilling any kind of difficult situation. And those guys have been the first people to work in the North Sea. I will bet you, if you go to the work permits team in Kenya and ask to see nationalities of people working in Kenya, you find high percentage Trinidadians in proportion to our population. We get around doing those kinds of things. With all that knowledge and information, we've not captured it in a research way. We've not said to these guys, you drill this well, you have these difficulties. We have the well report, but it doesn't say why you made that decision. Where is that knowledge? How do we capture knowledge? So research is capturing knowledge. People in Kenya are negotiating contracts now, are making decisions. Where is that knowledge captured? The president just met with the governor and made a decision. That's a political and economic decision. What is the nuance behind that? Those are the things that we never capture. How many books have you seen written by former ministers of energy who have made decisions that are impactful in a nation? Yeah? And that may or may not have been aligned with the technical recommendations. So it's not just technical research, there's that. There's also policy strategy that goes on. And we tend to look to research other people's works and other people's written works. And we don't talk to get first-hand information, where the rich material is. And I think I said it before. Ours, like yours, is an oral tradition country. We learned from our parents and our grandparents. Our grandparents probably didn't read and write, but they could teach us wisdom. Yeah? In 2 generations, we think the only knowledge is in books. Yeah? After centuries of knowledge being passed on orally. How much of our research is done verbally? How much of our teaching is done verbally? And so it's something that we have that we haven't tapped into. So that research is available. But to find ways to do it. And even lower down the ladder is innovation. Every time you change your way, you do something, you innovate. I remember going into my kids' school, I was on the board, and they added this new extension to the building, and they wanted to take cabling around, Wi-Fi cable, or the LAN cable. And they only had these steel bars there, and they couldn't find a way to attach the cable to the steel bars. The duct tape would come off, and I said to the principal, do you have bulldog clips? Those big clips. I said, just clip it on right there. So why is that so difficult to figure out? But I saw that because having worked in the oil fields, you make it with what you have. Right? You innovate, yeah? But you're out in the sea, in the forest somewhere. You have to make do with what you have. And we innovate all the time, but we don't document. And even when we document, we don't share. And that's a challenge we have to overcome. Yeah? So there's an opportunity for Kenya to do that. And one thing that Kenya has, better than most people in the region, is the way you use IT and what you have there. And the vision that you have and the kind of self-confidence you have around that space. How do you use that to build knowledge bases, to support that kind of research and development? So to me, I think I said it, well, not here, but yesterday, that the geophysical industry uses more IT than any other industry, other than the military and maybe the big companies now. But getting access to that and using that, what can Kenya do with geophysics to build their IT and extend their IT capabilities to other sectors? It's just tremendous, I think, what's possible. So that is how I would say you need to look at building capability. You need to know that building capability has to be strategic, has to be comprehensive. It's much more than training. It's not just technical skills. And I'll show you a bit about how we got to understand that. And that there are many different roles for different stakeholders. The international companies have roles in training and development, in the universities, technical schools, governments, People need to know how government works. And government needs to have people working with them who bring a different lens to it, help them improve their processes. Yeah. Here's an example of how we built a training ecosystem in Trinidad and Tobago. Over years, this is something that evolved over time. We didn't just become and invent this. So like I said, we had the oil fields out in the forest, really removed from civilization. We had gas fields out there, and we used the gas to put power plants. So we had industries developing away from population centers. But we gotta get people to work in them. So what we did is that we designed training for the kids in the community. And again, the road network wasn't very good. You can leave the city and drive down there. People were farmers, agricultural, living nearby. Kids were probably didn't go to secondary school. Some just finished. We had a good high school, good primary school system. So the people working on the plants designed training programs. They created apprenticeship programs. They even had sometimes dormitories and classrooms. And they designed the training programs for the kids to come in and teach them what pressure means, what angles mean. They would cut triangles out of cardboard and say this is what a right angle is. And they would teach them like that. But they would spend 30% of the time in the classroom, 70% in a lab, in a workshop, on the rig floor, on the plant floor. And that's how they learned. So we build this system, and like I said before, designed by the practitioners, taught by the practitioners, hands-on. And those kids will come up with very little certification, but they'll work on the plant. And they'll be supervised by guys who felt a need to teach, and a culture of teaching those below you evolved. And that's the behavior we're looking for, the competency. And then we took that methodology into the city centers, into the big technical schools, to train people for the growth of oil and gas in the 70s, and make it available for other industries to grow. And part of that was the culture. So that culture of training, and that is what the Germans do very, very well. The German master craftsman, you're taught to be a teacher. And that's what, and we actually, in the 70s, partnered with the Germans to build some of the big technical schools we had, and the methodologies. And we still work with them very closely to build out that master craftsman approach. So the way we have it today, we've kind of said, okay, fine, we have a lot of people who are working out there, who are very skillful, with no certification at all. So you built a certification process where you're brought into a workshop or a lab, and you're tested. And your competencies are measured. And based on that, you're either given a certificate, or told, this is what you need to do to get a certificate, or to go to another level. And that involves some more training perhaps, and some more testing. So suddenly you're now employable because you're certified. So we created a way to get people certified, but through proper testing. And what we built is programs where people can come in at the very lowest level. If they stop there, that's fine. If they wanted, they could take their certification and move up by getting training, and go up and up. And every certification here allows you to articulate upwards. And many of our practitioners came through that system. They would have entered at different levels based on whether you were in high school, so in primary school, how far in high school you went if you had a degree, and then move up. In fact, many of our kids graduate with a degree and then go back to do a technical vocational diploma to get that practical skill. In addition, we have one or two private schools that will take these basic electrical technician, mechanical technician, process technician, and convert them into somebody who will work on an oil rig, on a platform. Exactly as those lots of disciplines I showed that are very specialized, and that happens, so the core education, the core training happens in a technical school. The specialization happens in a special place, and that's not difficult to put in place. So that's the process we use. The key thing to look at here is on the right-hand side, in yellow, is even today, we build the schools close to the factories, close to the industrial estates, close to the plants. So the students have access to the fact to practice or to visit or work on the plants or the rigs or wherever they're looking at. So that model has stayed with us. Now, what do we do? What do we want to do in local content? I hope you can see this, but what it says is that the different activities, different services, different goods you can provide, they will give you more opportunity to get jobs, give you more opportunities to be a business owner. And those are the kind of things you have to figure out, which are the characteristics of these types of services that will allow you to use local materials. So again, that's analysis. that you can get by asking the question, what goes into providing this service? And you can look at it in different ways. This one says, which jobs, or which set of jobs gives more impact on the economy by what it does directly or by a multiplier effect? And you can see some jobs give a bigger impact on the GDP, for instance. You know, maybe by the numbers of jobs, the kinds of jobs. So there are different ways, and we have enough economists in this room who can do these kinds of analyses. You know, speaking to the people who have the technical input into the services. So how we get the message? There's a lot of moving parts, but it's not insurmountable. If you put a systematic approach to determining what you want to do, how you want to build it. All of these will feed into your strategy and implementation plan. Any questions? No? Everybody's tired? But I have to be tired one. So what I just showed you there is a little bit of how we build skills in people, with a little segue into the kinds of services and goods that people can provide. And I will look at some examples now of some things to consider. And if you're building businesses, supporting business growth, and helping them get involved in the sector, what are some of the considerations? What are the things you can do? What are the things that people have done and how they work? So this slide is very busy, but it lists the kinds of things you have to consider if you want to get into a business, if you want to invest, if you want to grow. And these are not unique to oil and gas. This is any industry. But what it tries to do is say you have to be thorough. You have to be thoughtful. It's not just the demand and supply, it's the risk. It's the availability of technology. It's access to opportunities. It's a whole range of things. And it's getting this range of things thought through. It will give you the right kinds of answers as to where you focus. Too often I've seen people invest in businesses in oil and gas to get into the industry because they had some equipment or some space or knew somebody, but they didn't think through the other parts. And again, it's business. And if we are to support businesses, we should support them by helping them being thorough, you know. In Trinidad, I think I mentioned this, and you have to forgive me if I say I think I mentioned this, because in the last week, I spent 3 days training local content in Beirut, and 2 days training local content in Dodoma. So I've been on my feet for 5 years in the last week, and I'm not sure what I said here or yesterday, so please forgive me. Yeah? So there's a lot to be considered. Yeah? And if you don't do that right, you can destroy a lot of opportunity, a lot of value, a lot of reputations. Yeah? So be very thoughtful. Now, this should tell you that you need to spend time and resources getting this right. It's not going to happen overnight. Importantly, too, you need to communicate this to those who you want to invest, so they understand what the risks are, what they need to consider. Is there anything in there that stands out as a red flag that doesn't make sense? Or something that makes sense? Right. So here's a nice easy one for you. I said that every business starts with opportunity. Yeah? And we need to help people identify the opportunity. But a business has a life cycle. And you need to take the opportunity into a better design concept, take it into something that you could convince yourself to invest in a business case. Then you have to build it through getting finance, people, so on. Then you have to operate it. At some point, you may want to exit from it in some way or the other. Somebody may want to buy you out. Yeah? To do that, you need several things. You need what you typically call in-house capability. If you're doing welding, you need welders. If you're doing welding, you still have to file taxes and pay your staff. You need an accountant. Do you hire an accountant, or do you get one from an accounting firm, or an individual accountant? You need lawyers. How do I get a reliable lawyer? Oh, sorry, there are lots of them in this room. But you know, there's an external support ecosystem that needs to be in place. How do I know what is a reliable supply and I'm getting value for money? Where do I get that information? As a small business, I can't make that information myself. I mean, now there are tools online in the developed world, we can check that. We haven't got those here yet. And then, so I need internal systems which I may not be able to build myself. Who's going to help me build those? I need an external support system. And then I need a business environment that is supportive of what I'm doing. The government tax system disadvantages me by making me pay for raw materials, and my competitor doesn't pay taxes because he gets duty-free import of finished product. So there are those three categories of things that we all need as businesses to support. I need information. Where is that coming from? And this is the basis that I used back in 2001 to design an enterprise center in Baku that was actually quite good. It's still running. And then I built one subsequent to that in Trinidad. But this one, I understood at the Baraza, was the model used by Shell in Oman. But this went way beyond that. So the thing is that businesses in a new industry need help to survive. We have in our midst, and I'll show you in the industry, people who can provide that help, except they may not know that they can provide that help, that help is needed, or have a way to deliver it. And we need somebody to conjure it all together. And that's what we did in Baku and we did in Trinidad, and I'll show you that model. But the thing is, we understand that we can help business grow. We need to understand how and where, so we can figure what we can do to help them. This is a strategy that we've used in places, I recommend it to others, and it's not rocket science again. It's, if I have something already existing, let me use it. But let me improve it, where it comes up to international standards, and it can become competitive with people outside. So I'm helping you grow your business, not necessarily in scale, but in quality. But then the next step is actually what you're doing, you're providing painting services. But for painting, you're always hiring this contractor who has scaffolding, right? You can actually add scaffolding as a service. And you can also add sandblasting, because you have to sandblast before you paint. So why don't I let you grow? I'll give you a contract that will allow you to go out and purchase some scaffolding, train your people, get certified. So the next horizon is extending the local companies so they get bigger and better and become competitive, not only within Kenya, but internationally. And the third horizon is, fine, since you're competitive here at an international standard, you should be able to go overseas. How do we make that happen? And unfortunately, countries in the developing world, some of them have. We haven't got it together. How does a country work to promote its businesses outside? And again, it comes back to how can we use common markets to make that happen? And that has to be thought through. It can't be left to chance, or else it won't happen. Yeah? So the third horizon is going to be making the businesses internationally competitive and creating in your own space centers of excellence. You can do that if you have the demand. Now, keep in mind this: the scale and pace to which you grow is a function of the market. If you haven't got the demand, you can't do all these great things. Yeah? So keep that in mind. So what did you do in Trinidad? We built SEED, the Center for Energy Enterprise Development, which really was a two-mode delivery of services, virtual and physical. And we offered consulting services, access to information, support our businesses need. Yeah? And we did it in a way that the companies would benefit because their suppliers will now improve their performance, the operating systems, the reporting systems, the way they treated their people. So the people didn't come on the facility and be disgruntled because the employer wasn't treating them right. All kinds of things. The service companies were happy because we helped them improve what they had to offer. The banks were very happy. The banks financed this because suddenly we can now finance businesses because somebody with some knowledge has vetted it for us and has given us some sense that this can make sense. Now, where do these people come from? Now, certainly you can't hire a huge team of experts to advise. So what we did, we created a collaboration between the banks, the service companies, the government, the oil companies. And we created two teams. A core team, typically of administrators and project managers, who would then work with the clients to get projects. We'd have advisory teams or individuals who would come from the banks From the oil companies, people will volunteer their time, work on projects, provide mentorship, provide actual consulting support. We have 1 or 2 personal private consultants as well. And that team will offer the kinds of things you would need as a business that is not available in this market at this time. How do you get that? That's the enterprise center concept we built. I have to say I'm saddened to see how enterprise centers have devolved over time and kind of gone to the lowest common denominator and not try to raise the level of input into the companies. They've gone to, let's help you with Excel spreadsheets and tendering. That's fine, but there's more to it than people need. So we designed this. It got financed by the banks initially for the seed financing. I went into the design and build of it, and the operation, the companies and the government funded it. The model was always one where it will work itself out of business and push some of these services into private hands and into the chambers of commerce and other organizations. And that's what's happened to it. It's no longer a functional entity, but a lot of the tools we built toolkits. And I'll show you one of the toolkits we built. We had all kinds of toolkits for businesses to do all kinds of things, form joint ventures. Lots of tools. One of the tools that was quite popular is that all these small companies were coming up. And we built a manual for corporate secretaries. One didn't exist. As a corporate secretary, what filings do you need to make? When? How do you do that? Where are the forms? We created that manual. Simple things that we take for granted that just didn't exist. Okay? So we recognized that there was value for all the stakeholders, and they recognize it, and we build this in collaboration with the stakeholders, getting their input, understanding what they needed, and doing it in a way that it met their needs. So, and that is what fundamentally allowed it to start up and grow. The finances, the banks, the oil companies, the service companies, the government also value in a model like this one. And that's a quick look at what it takes to build, incentivize local companies. Melba, I hope this addresses your scenario. Are there any questions, any comments, any thoughts, anything I missed or spoke too quickly about? Yeah. I want a microphone. There's one on the table right there. Right there.
Thanks, Antony, for giving us the landscape. So I have a specific question. What you see as the key enablers for success for a joint venture, and what is your experience in the past to remove those enablers? The reason why we're asking this is if you look at Kenya, there are 2 joint ventures only in the upstream. And if they get it right, what you just shared, there should be many more.
So actually, like I said, I built tools for this for clients, small companies. And one of the things that, first thing I say is know yourself. Know what you want to do. Know what your gaps are. Understand your culture and your behaviors and what you want in a partner in terms of what they bring, how they behave, right? And then look for that match. So I would say, 1, know what you bring. 2, know what is needed and what you're lacking, right? And 3, find somebody who brings complementary types of services or skills, but also brings complementary behaviors and values. That's very important. Yeah? Now, the challenge we face in Trinidad, as you will probably find in Kenya and other developing countries, is that many of these businesses are family owned and family managed. And that in itself is a double-edged sword. People put their heart and soul into it to make sure it succeeds. But there's always a challenge in succession. Sometimes it goes to 1 generation, beyond that is difficult. And then valuing the company, if somebody wanted to buy you out, is also very difficult. And then bringing together 2 companies where one CEO is your son, but he has a family business intention, and the other company has another person. Who do you choose as CEO? You know, so decisions around that have always got to be embedded in the culture. But those are the key things. And then importantly, ask yourself this: what are we trying to do with this company we're forming? Right? And then have an exit strategy. How do we escape from this? Because there are different ways to do it. One of the things you can do is say, I have a company, you have a company. Let's bring them together. Form a joint venture. Or you can say, let's create a special purpose vehicle in which we both have equity. And our companies are somehow a little bit ring-fenced from that. And then that does something. That provides another mechanism. It creates some challenges if you're going to go to the bank and the balance sheet isn't there. So there are things that have to go around there. So there are different ways to do it. But these are not things that are hard to find out. Many companies do that routinely. The big 5 accounting firms have long track records in M&As, and they can bring some support to do that. Yeah. The challenge, I say, is so that's getting international companies to join venture with local companies. Another challenge is the due diligence aspect of it. Because many local family businesses haven't got the information and track record and proof that international companies need to pass their home government regulator tests. And that's a big challenge. You know, in Ghana, when the ministry put into the local content regulations, minimum 5% local content for operation licenses, minimum 10% for service companies. The question is, how will these companies be selected? How do they pass due diligence tests? And we had to actually do training to SMEs in Ghana on due diligence, on what the companies do, and how to look at them. And that's something you have to do here. If you want local companies to get partnered with foreign companies, there needs to be some people who understand due diligence from European regulator perspective, American regulator perspective, and bring those to the table. So there's several things, they're not difficult to overcome, but it's just asking the right people the question and doing it together. Anything else?
Okay, thank you very much for a wonderful presentation. Looking at the oil and gas companies and even other extractives, most of them, they're not willing to share information with the community around. How do you make them accountable to share this information, especially on training? What do they require? And even on this, especially in businesses, what do they got to be supplied? Thank you.
So, I don't know that companies don't want to share information. I think they're cautious in how they share it because they don't know how it might be used. That's part of it. The other thing is that companies actually share information with the regulator quite often, and a lot of it, depending on the jurisdiction. But the regulators don't always know how to use it. So one of the challenges regulators face is that licenses, contracts usually have a confidentiality clause that says you cannot share these things, certain things. But quite often governments take these things to mean secrecy and don't know how to aggregate data across companies, how to neutralize or make data not identifiable. So ways to get information out there in a useful form. So yes, it's a challenge, but there are two sources that you can access that have the data, the regulator and the companies. How do you get them to bring it out in a way that makes it useful without avoiding the risk of it being abused, not properly understood, or being seen as breaking confidentiality agreements? But the information is there. You know, governments, for instance, get field development plans. The field development plan will say we will drill so many wells, and these are the depths of the wells, we will build these facilities, this is the size of the facility, this is the project duration, this is the cost. And the government has the right to say, can I see a Gantt chart? Can I see a well breakdown structure? Can I see your resource and all the inputs? The government can ask for that. And the government can say, fine, now I know we have the need for 15 welders. I can now make that known. I can talk to the company and say, how certain are you about this? So let's talk to the schools and say to the schools, please don't train 45 welders, only train 15. So you have to know the detail again. Where the information is something you have to know. How you use it, how you communicate it are key. And those are things that requires conversation between the government, the companies, the stakeholders who have to benefit from this information.
Okay, hi. I just wanted to give a comment on the local, how small companies can grow, like the joint ventures. I wanted to give an example that local companies can also grow through having partnerships. An example is a company I work for, Bentworth. They got into a partnership for a specific project, the Tallow project, with Baker Hughes. So in so doing, Baker Hughes had the technology and the processes. Bentworth had the personnel and the equipment. So for that specific project, they were able to be in a partnership and deliver a service, and both of them wouldn't lose their entity. And therefore it was a win-win for both of them. So local companies can also join partnerships being project specific instead of going into a joint venture that now brings legal complications.
Yeah, and the different kinds of affiliate models you can use. Joint venture is just one of them.
Okay, I just have a sort of an all-encompassing question based on your two presentations today. Just for clarity, there's a lot of moving pieces, and Trinidad seems to have got it right. Was there a statutory body that was, because you know, like these days in Kenya, you know, I think one of our common refrains is that the law is very clear, everything is enshrined in the law now. So I'm wondering if that's the route that Trinidad took, where you embedded some sort of committee, which was like a permanent body where you have government appointees or private sector appointees, and whether that such a body still exists today, and what Trinidad's current approach to local content is, having embedded all of those things into your oil and gas sector.
Sure. So Trinidad has a unique experience, and the answer is yes or no. We have a body now, didn't always have a body. When Trinidad got independence, we had the oil and gas industry. It was recognized that the companies were winding down their operations because Trinidad was old producing fields, and we need to make sure we get more out of it. And one thing the government did is put in place good regulations, good legislation, and hired people from the companies to manage the ministry. Pay them industry-grade salaries. So you can attract and retain people who understand the industry, who can relate to the companies. The laws and the regulations were very, very good, way ahead of the times. 1971 regulations, you must train people to replace expatriates. You must say how much you pay each person to the government, which contracts you give to people, the local authorities. So all the information that is required to monitor local content was there. All the requirements, capacity building, to procurement were there, enshrined in regulation. And he had strong regulators who understood the business. So what happened is that the guys who understood the industry ran it without tools and procedures, because they could do it. As they matured and retired, the people coming in didn't have that same experience and weren't able to continue in that vein. So the things fell away. The companies stopped reporting. The service companies were doing well because they'd been well established. They could compete. You didn't need support anymore. And then in the 90s, you found a whole bunch of gas. And the industry grew overwhelmingly, and foreign service companies wanted to come in. And the ministry wasn't implementing any regulations. Local content fell off. Local companies were replaced in things they were doing by foreign companies, even though they were more expensive, because it was part of a global procurement strategy. And then the government put in place a local content committee, headed by the ministry, including industry, trades union, professional bodies, the bankers, and a few other agencies like that. Unfortunately, the ministry at that point had become under capacity, because the industry had grown, they had not replaced or renewed the procedures, the regulations, even though they were good in the early days, and the ministry was too stretched. And the government at the time was getting lots and lots of revenue from the high oil and gas prices, and didn't pay attention to the operations until very recently, when they discovered there's a huge amount of transfer pricing, and local companies being displaced by foreign companies. but afraid to speak up because that was the only game in town. They couldn't go anywhere else. So the government reconstituted the local content committee, and for my sins, they asked me to chair it. And we're now putting systems in place. Systems and procedures that will augment the regulations to make sure that happens. It's still a multi-stakeholder forum. There are companies that are represented on there through one of the chambers, so they're all there. But we have some catching up to do.
Thank you for the presentation. I have a question. Based on experience on some programs you've been doing with the private sector, we've noted the private sector prefer doing skill development in-house rather than supporting technical skills training. What is your experience and probably also your advice on that?
No, sorry, I missed the... Can you repeat it, please? I missed it.
From the experience,
yeah,
we've noted the companies have developed in-house training. They're in-house where they take the graduates and have training inside there, rather than partaking or contributing in the skill development during the training period. So what is your experience, or what advice can you give us?
I would like to hear the companies in Kenya, but my experience is that the oil companies train and develop the local employees very well, historically. I've not seen it, I mean, there's always people who will complain, but the quality of training they get and the kind of experience they get tend to be good, because once you engage somebody, you want to get value from them, you know, and you want to give them the best chance to produce. So I would say the companies have very good. My son did a petroleum engineering degree, and he started working with a small company, and he was very good. He did everything that the company needed because he was a one-man show. He got lots of experience. But then after about 5 years, I advised him he should work with a big company. Because for a while, because the kind of training and experience you get is somewhat different. You know, and he's doing that right now. So I would say, but this is not in Trinidad, but generally that's the kind of things companies do. So I would imagine that the companies here in Kenya are doing a good job at training their people. Now, what happens with them inside Kenya, outside of Kenya, I don't know. Because a lot of training and experience comes from things that might not be happening in country at this time. So there's cross postings. So I know, for instance, when I was working with the Minister of Energy in Ghana, there was an issue where Tullow wanted to bring people from Kenya to Ghana to train. And the government was protesting, these people have not any experience, the woman says you must come in with experience. And you had to make the case that actually this is two ways. You know, you don't learn unless you do. And the same way young Kenyans need to learn by doing. The things that they need to learn aren't happening in Kenya. And similarly, Ghanaians need to go elsewhere. So I think that a breakthrough was made there. So companies give their people opportunities to train, to do things that are not happening in the country at the moment. So when they start happening, they're already experienced. So there's some things that they do well. I don't know if you want to say anything more to that, Suzanne? Yeah.
I think what you've shared is what happens, because as you're saying, Kenya is not at a point when we are developing, but there are other countries that are already in that phase, so you find that there's that opportunity being provided. But besides that, there's also the subcontracting element. The fact that the likes of Schlumberger, if I can use that as an example, will train people because they have operations in other places where they can already start developing those skills. I said earlier about being caught up in a time warp, whereby we need to train people, but we are not ready to absorb those people currently in our operation. So there's need for that sharing of those training opportunities elsewhere, but perhaps looking more at technical skills, and maybe that's where you're looking at. In the case of technical skills, I'm not sure we are training anybody as talent right now. What we're doing is working very closely with the technical institutions such as yours, such as Kizito, such as the Lodo Vocational Training Center, Rift Valley Technical and Training Institute, to make sure that the standards are high enough to train people to a level that when our operations are ready, we can be able to bring them on and start providing whatever opportunities there are. Again, bearing in mind what we've also been told, experience is critical. You just don't take people from school and bring them to the workplace. They need to also have experience some of that work, or they should have an opportunity to work those skills in environments that are almost similar to us. So you're looking at health and safety, you're looking at the way in which those organizations are set up as well. And I can use an example of Soga that is doing that in Kwale. They are training people at the Kwale Technical Institute and taking them to other operations, warehousing finances, and making sure that they actually have the right PPE as an example, yeah? So that when they come to the oil and gas industry or the extractive industry, they are ready for that kind of environment. Yeah? I don't know whether that answers your question to say. Thank you.
Let me take a time check here, remember, it's 3:40. What time did we have allocated?
You've got an additional 20 to 25 minutes and the wrap up will be there.
Okay, so that's it. Well, let me quickly, I have two sections again, so I'll go through them quickly, and it's not difficult to go through quickly because a lot of these stuff I've covered before, and hopefully we could cover what we want today. So the second session, this actually talk about is enhancing local content across the value chain. So you get knowledge and technology transfer and joint ventures. We kind of get some of those already. You know, in the slide before, this slide I spoke about what it takes to get in. I spoke of barriers to entry, and there are many of those, and we have to find out ways to overcome those. And it's no different to getting into any kind of business. And often the barriers are technology and experience. And the reason we go into partnerships is to get access to that. You know, and there are many ways to get access to supplement what you have, to fill your gaps. And although we talk about joint ventures as one of them, it's not the only one. And there are many kinds you can use in different circumstances for different jobs, maybe short term, one-off, or longer term. Now this graphic actually came out of countries like South Korea, the pharmaceutical industry. And it can apply now to Google and Apple, in that companies acquire technology and know-how in different ways, including acquisitions and mergers. Yeah? And if you look at this continuum, the level of integration and knowledge transfer actually increases as you get more and more connected, more tightly wound. So joint venture sits in a sweet spot where you can actually find ways to transfer knowledge and technology without losing the identity. As a merger and acquisition, somebody goes away. Yeah? So there are different models to use, different ways to do it. And picking the right one really depends on the circumstances you're in, and where you want to go, what you have to offer, or what you're looking for in a partner. And that's, I guess, any business school student can tell you these things. This is what the world looks like. How you choose is a function of what you want. Now, in your case, in Kenya, the question you have to ask is, what are we trying to build? And if we say we want knowledge and technology transfer, immediately a red flag goes up, and it says, hang on, I have my proprietary technology. I'm not going to give it 10% to a local company. So is there another way to form a joint venture where somebody has 10% but doesn't take my proprietary technology? And I think the young lady just now addressed that. It was, fine, you have technology, I have a facility, I have a building, I have people, I have labor. Let's come together. My input is worth X%. Yours is Y, and let's form a joint venture based on that. Now, you say, fine, that creates a joint venture. But where's the knowledge transfer, technology transfer? But the knowledge transfer could be in business processes. We have ways we formulate tenders. We have ways we manage projects. We can share those with you as our partner because we're the guys working it. So there's knowledge transfer and business processes what we want to learn from the oil and gas companies and service companies. So don't lock ourselves into thinking we must transfer 100% of what we have. We can transfer some things. And what Kenya has to do is say, what do I want to extract from these companies that I can build for myself? I don't necessarily need Schlumberger's licenses or technology for their logs, but Schlumberger repairs equipment, and they have a machine shop to do that. Schlumberger's stuff goes down to the holes, they get damaged, it has to be fixed all the time. Schlumberger could own a machine shop or partner with somebody who does, and put a standard in place for a machine shop where he does things to oil industry standards, Schlumberger standards, and now can repair things for a factory, a farm, get equipment back up to speed. So that's the kind of thing you want to do. You want to have good processes in place, good equipment that can support the industry and other industries. And that's the way to think about it. Yeah? So it doesn't have to be. So in Trinidad and Tobago, over time, our system evolved. Yeah? And we learned over history. And we said there are 3 horizons for local content. And I think, can you see this before? The first one was, as everybody starts off, we want to get jobs. We want people doing the work. So we actually targeted the operational skills, whether it was engineers, mechanics, geologists, things that happen in country, on the ground. We want to do that. We want jobs, yeah? And we did that. And in fact, historically, that's what we were. We were factory floors, we were farms to a bigger colonial government. We were trained to behave as and operate things well. We learned systems, procedures to repeat it. We were good operators. One of the things we discovered is that every time since we got to independence, and we had another asset we discovered, another opportunity we saw, we had to find somebody to come on, a foreign investor, to partner with us. What does that investor do? That investor comes, assesses your resource, assesses the opportunity, looks at technology, markets, processes, and then comes up with a plan. Gets that plan and comes up with a business case in terms of, can this make money, how do I finance it? Takes that case and goes to a bank or financier, raises capital based on the arguments he makes and the resources. That person is given access to this opportunity, a license, a real estate grant, and that license, that business case is now financed. That person now goes to contractors who will design the plant, the facility, who will help build it, and he will provide the contract negotiation, the contracting, and the project management. And he will build it. And while it's being built, locals will be hired because it's on the ground. While it's being built, locals will be trained to operate it because it's on the ground, it's cheaper. So we always get jobs in construction and operation. But the things that we brought the foreigner in for, the analysis of the asset, business case development, raising capital, contracting with suppliers, managing contractors, project management, those stay at head office. These are the things we need to build new businesses. These are the things that can help us take our assets and improve it. And we've come to the conclusion that actually resources aren't as valuable as this foreign investment. And these guys, when they negotiate, get a bigger piece of the pie than we do. Because traditionally, labor and resources have been cheap. I mean, I come from a place where people stole labor and put it to work on lands they stole. It was called slavery and colonialism. And that model worked for centuries. When we came out of independence, we learned that. And we learned how that helped other countries develop and what we needed to do to develop. And the thing we needed to do is to build those head office skills. Take the asset, take it to market. The asset has value. The opportunity has value. We don't appreciate that an opportunity is what is financed, provided it is presented in a case that makes sense to the investor. The opportunity does not exist without the right to access the asset. And we have to realize that, we have to understand that. So what we learned during the 1980s, when we were taking natural gas, because we get to petrochemicals, 70s and 80s, we discovered that there was actually the methanol and ammonia companies would not allow us to enter the market. They wouldn't allow us to visit their plants, say they operated. They wouldn't allow us to use their ships, spare capacity to move product around, because they had something like a monopoly. And that cartel behavior didn't want anybody coming in. So we literally had to figure out how to design plants. Luckily there are companies who could design it, We had people who could operate oil refineries and so on. We could train operators. Equipment was much different. But the shipping and trading, we had to learn. We had to buy ships. We had to manage ships. And in doing that, we created, and then around the same time, BP, Shell, Texaco left Trinidad because the fields were depleting. And they found BP found big discoveries in Alaska, Shell found Nigeria, and they left Trinidad in those times. And we had to build capacity to run businesses. And we needed those head office skills. And we got a chance to do it. And we realized how much value we've been giving away by not building those skills. So our model for local content says if you're going to bring companies into Trinidad to capture the $1 billion of spend on goods and services, they should partner with local businesses in a way that transfers those business skills, those middle section head office skills to local companies. So not only government and government companies have these skills, but the SMEs. And that's the model we created. Now, the interesting thing about that is that a local investor doesn't get equity, doesn't get the right to participate at a strategy level unless he has equity. So he must invest. Luckily for us, the oil boom created a lot of capital in the economy. So the banks had spare capacity they could use. People could invest. And then, of course, as an business owner, not only did you get jobs, you also got profits. And the profits came back into the market. And what it allowed is the aggregation of capital. So now you have two things you didn't have as much of before: private capital and private business skills. Those two can move to any sector. Those are the things you need to build tourism, agriculture, fisheries, and that is what we never think about moving to other sectors, the business skills. And keep in mind, like I said before, the oil and gas industry uses very high-level business skills. High-level, very good ways of managing capital, of managing finance. What we discovered is that a lot of our businesses, finance managers, were actually accountants and didn't do finance management very well. So we lost a lot of value. So this is the model we use. First, we learned how to operate the industry. Second, we learned how to operate the business. And then finally, we knew what it takes to control a business. And ultimately, it's about making businesses out of these resources, or these assets, these opportunities. And that's the model we use. That is a kind of staged model. You're not able to move up unless you've had the foundation built. And that's what we think works for us. So that's one way to get that transfer into other sectors. The other ways, of course, but they are just one. Any thoughts or questions? This slide, I did it back more than 10 years ago. This is out here. Back in 2003, actually. No? So, let me give you a sense of how Trinidad and Tobago went about transforming itself based on using oil and gas, taking lateral linkages to create a different kind of economy. Now, as I mentioned, in the early days of independence, we actually put in place mechanisms. We had a vision for capturing more value from oil and gas, training people, getting them involved, going further downstream, getting more local capital employed. That was our aspiration in 1963. Put that in place in legislation on licenses and contracts. In the 1970s, when the oil price increased, companies were flaring gas. The government said, no, we have excess capital, excess revenue from high oil prices. Let's invest it in this gas. Let's pick up this gas and use it. So the Prime Minister at the time said, and I like to read this because it resonates. He said, blessed as we are with hydrocarbon resources, we have a choice to make. There have been attempts to persuade us that the simplest and easiest thing to do would be to sit back, export our oil, export our gas, do nothing else, and just receive revenues derived from such exports. And as it were, lead a life of luxury, at least for a limited time. His conclusion was, this government has completely rejected, as it amounts to putting the entire nation on the dole. He went on to say, instead, we have taken what may be the more difficult route, and that is accepting the challenge of entering the world of steel, aluminum, methanol, fertilizer, and petrochemicals, in spite of our smallness and in spite of our existing level of technology. I wish I had a slide to show you, but we did build 30 world-scale plants. We became one of the biggest exporters of methanol, ammonia. We were at one time the biggest exporter of LNG to the US. We did, like I said, all our projects were built on time, under schedule, world-class operational excellence. So we did that. And that was because somebody articulated a vision of where he wanted to go, and then put in place the support mechanisms for that. And it's that ecosystem that starts with a vision, puts in place the support systems of policies, legislation, institutions to make it happen. Resource it with people and money, make sure it happens. And then make sure that companies who are investing in the country would support that in some form or the other. As an example, we have our laws that because we had a refinery, you must either refine any oil you find in the country, or if you're refining, if your production exceeds 50,000 barrels a day, you will build a refinery. But it's a clause. However, the minister may give an exemption in certain circumstances. So it turns out our refinery was configured for one kind of oil, heavy oil. But the oil discovered in the 70s was light oil, sweet oil, which would get less value going to our refinery compared to other refineries. So the deal was struck that you will export your oil, but instead you will invest in another fertilizer plant. Yeah? So the oil company invested in the fertilizer plant. Now that was really good because the bankers were then assured that this fertilizer plant will not be short of gas. Yeah? So the way you structure deals is also very important. So then those are the kinds of things that companies participated in. So the strategies only come about because you have people in the regulatory agencies in the government who understood these kinds of relationships that can make them work. Yeah? So I keep emphasizing, get people who know the business to work for you. Yeah? So what did that take us? So we had this vision in the 60s that helped us build an oil industry. We had a vision in the 70s that helped us build a natural gas industry. Like everybody else in the early 2000s, we were building a 2020 vision. Yeah? And we built a vision for the sector. And we had a mandate to build a sector that will support national development. But tell us what the vision for the sector is. And that fed into the national country vision. Yeah? And that came one document. And out of that came a local content policy that says, how do we do local content supposed to support national development? And that fed into a national implementation plan. Yeah? So the connection that we entered into in the 1960s, we continued to the 70s, early 2000s. And that's the genesis of the policy we've had in place in 2003, 2004. It's part of that national development objective. I didn't intend to present that, and I won't. What I want to show is that some of the linkages identified in the policy. And it's about using the oil and gas to build people, to build enterprise capacity, to build innovation, to build technology, to build capital markets. Why? Because the national vision was to become an innovation-driven economy. To make sure that we could have the technology. So in the 1970s, when oil prices were high, oil production was high, the government took the decision to invest surplus revenues into natural gas development. In the 2000s, when oil production was high and prices were high, the decision was made to invest excess capacity in human development. So that education was free from nursery to tertiary, high school, university, technical vocational school. Technical institutions were built, technology centers were built. So it was about transforming it from a resource-driven economy to an innovation-driven economy. Let me give you some examples of how we thought about it, how we addressed cross-cutting issues to get other sectors involved, to build other sectors. Again, devil's in the detail. So we looked at the different categories of services I had up earlier, and said for each of those, what are their characteristics? And the characteristics we're interested in are the ones that we're looking to get. So which ones create jobs? Which ones create high quality jobs, that middle level job, the head office jobs? Which one allows innovation, technology transfer, joint venture? Which ones are immune or not so susceptible to cycles in oil prices or industrial activity, so that they can sustain themselves? And we kind of give a sense check as, yeah, these are good, we should go after these. these are nice, you know. And then we said, we're a small country, we can't do everything, we have to pick and choose. How do we pick? So we say, let's put a filter on this. Let's look at the ones that are high impact and the ones that are sustainable. And let's really focus on those. And we did. And based on that, we picked the kinds of skills we wanted to focus on, the kinds of skills we wanted to build, the kinds of services and industries we wanted to focus on and to build capacity in. And that strategy we used, linking national development with the sector's activities, getting the sector activity to get locals to participate. And this is the picture in Trinidad over time. In the 1970s and before independence, before the 70s, we were a factor-driven economy, improving by producing more at a lower price of generally raw materials. We had a refinery. In the 1970s and 80s, we moved to an investment-driven economy, where we invested in natural gas, got more businesses going, grew the economy, industrializing. And then with this last iteration, we tried to move towards an innovation-driven economy. And in 2013, the World Economic Forum declared Trinidad and Tobago an innovation-driven economy. So for some reason, we got there. But we didn't get, in every stage, we had a vision, we had a strategy, and we had empowerment of those who were meant to be in charge. One thing we missed putting in place, and the last iteration, was accountability. And we paid a price for that. And I can talk to you about that on the sidelines. But you have to have the regulator accountable for decisions made, actions taken. You have to have transparency in how things are done. And if you don't do that, you will lose a lot of value. As well as we've done, and we've done well, we made some horrible, horrible mistakes that we wouldn't like anybody in the world to repeat. It's not worth repeating it, yeah? So that's what we did. So if I were to summarize, it's we moved through stages of analyzing the demand, supply, understanding our aspirations as a nation, building a vision for that. Using that vision to develop strategies, putting that vision into goals, strategies, into plans, and then building policies. Sorry, this is the wrong side here. So this is small people. And then creating policies, laws, regulations, building institutions. But a key piece, and a piece that lets us down, is the end piece, building into operation procedures that help people accountable, allow for consistency and transparency. And those are the things that we needed to build. What we also didn't build, and why we failed, that we didn't build a feedback monitoring system. We didn't build a reporting system. And I would suggest you build those into your laws, into your regulations, into institutions, and resource them, and make sure they're accountable. It's not good saying you will do these things if your budget is not aligned for it. You know, and that's something that we tend to make a mistake doing. We don't do it. And so I say it's important that parliamentarians understand this. So they know the value of the resource, they understand the value of having the capacity to manage it properly. Yeah. So you have to get people, you have to give them what they need, and you have to make sure they're accountable. To get that, you don't just take it out of thin air. You have to be analytical. You have to have information, be able to analyze it, and to be able to make strategic decisions based on situation you're in, where you want to go. We talked about regulated or not oil and gas. To me, unless you regulate it initially, you will not get it right. You have to have things protected in some places, orderly all the time. But you have to always, always improve. And a big piece of improvement is communication. And the reason for that is that there are many stakeholders involved with many different roles. And each stakeholder has a responsibility. That responsibility may mean holding others accountable. So you have a framework that I've kind of put together again, and I use frameworks to help me think through this complex thing. It has on this side those agencies who create the instruments to hold others accountable. So you have the government at the top, the regulators in the middle, and then the implementers and support agencies at the bottom. And they are the ones who actually deliver at different levels, national, sector, or operational. And then they have different instruments. Now, on the left-hand side, the ones above are providing guidance and rules for the ones below. The ones below are important to the ones above. and they are monitoring them. On the right-hand side, the instruments of governance set up the framework in which ones below it should operate. So the Constitution then drives laws, that drives regulations and contracts and so on. All the way down to operating procedures and tools and systems, which we tend to forget. These are the things that actually where the rubber hits the road. And again, in assessing a system of governance, we have to assess, are these things that we have in place adequate? Are they appropriate? Are the ones at the top enabling and facilitating the ones below? Are the ones below implementing what's intended by the ones above? We have to have that discussion. And this happens across the board. I just pulled out some pieces in oil and gas, but this applies to every sector in the country. And that's the kind of thing you have to do, to ask yourself, is your governance framework fit for purpose? What's not in there, and what needs to get in there is, what is the review process? Is that built into the Constitution? Maybe not. Is it built into the laws? Perhaps. And how are those requirements being enforced? All of this means you have many stakeholders with different roles wanting information, who have information to provide, who may not have a way to provide it to those who need it. How do we know what you have? And how do we get what you have? There needs to be a smooth mechanism for knowledge transfer, knowledge management. And this graphic is basic. It says there's so many pieces, so many people who have information they can supply, who can take information out, who can use information to create analysis, who can share information through the media, who can do research and talk about research. How do universities get data? There's a whole set of things that companies do internally, some of which they can share with others, agencies. Yeah, who's managing this knowledge base for Kenya? Who's building that? And again, you have a lot of skills and experience in technology. You can build a knowledge management system for a whole industry in your country that nobody else has. You know, so that is my quick sense of what it takes to make this local content work. As you can see, there's a lot of moving parts. A lot of things need to be done. The key things I will always say is you have to be analytical, you have to be strategic, you have to monitor, and you have to review. Those are my key observations. I will also say that none of this works unless you find ways to communicate effectively with stakeholders. And keep in mind, communication has two channels, the outbound channel and the inbound channel. You have to engage, you have to listen, you have to hear stakeholders. And there's something, we see communication as PR messaging. It's not that, that's in this case. Yeah? The bottom line is that local content is complex. It involves many moving parts, many players, not all having the same priorities in terms of what needs to be done and timeliness. It crosses many regulators. There are multiple regulators and oversight agencies. It needs to be managed in a systematic way for any chance of success. There's a joined-up approach that needs to happen. That. It needs an overarching single oversight authority to make sure all the pieces are moving in unison and all the intermediary regulators are aligned. Someone needs to be accountable for local content. And I think it's a role of civil society, because ultimately, and we keep forgetting this, the oil and gas resources belong to the people. The people hire a government to manage on its behalf. We all know governments sometimes have their own mandate, their own objectives, their own priorities. I'm sure it's not so in Kenya, but in some countries, that's the truth. And civil society is another voice to the people, a way they engage with the politicians, with the decision makers. And they can't do that effectively unless they have access to information, unless they are aware of what's happening, unless they understand what's happening, and have an opportunity to ask questions, give comments, get feedback. And this is more important in oil and gas than in other sectors in the past. What I will say is that, fortunately, because of the nature of oil and gas and the emotive responses that it drives people to, that has been happening. No other industry started up with this kind of level of civil society engagement. It speaks lots about the quality of governance that the oil and gas industry enables. My recommendation is that you grab the opportunity, use oil and gas to improve the quality of governance in one sector, get a better outcome for your country, And hopefully that will point you and point your country in a different direction. With that, I thank you. Any questions?
I just wanted to make a comment. I really appreciate the takeaways from your last part, and especially two that I would see as very important is think very wide. The solutions that you present for Trinidad and Tobago are much wider than exporting oil or having a own refinery. It's a much bigger picture. I think that's really important. And the other one is around transparency, because I think a pitfall for many countries that start to implement the local content policy is they think that local content is local ownership. And there are many, many examples around the world of companies with 51% local ownership that don't add any value or actually are value destroying. So I think, George, that point that you added is very well made.
Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Looking at Trinidad and Tobago, I think what I'm seeing, if I got you right, is that the oil and gas industry has been there for quite some time. So you have had the luxury of making mistakes, learning from them, and moving forward. In the case of Kenya, where we are made to understand that the resource is really finite, and in a short while, probably it will be gone. One question I wanted to ask is, what are the classic challenges or failures that Trinidad and Tobago has learned that you would like other countries like Kenya that are getting into the system to learn from? And two, then what are the recommendations that you would put forward for a country like ours to be able to take advantage of the time and limited resources that we have to spur economic development, especially when you look at it in the areas of littoral linkages? Thank you.
Sure. So, in terms of mistakes we've made and things we could have done better, I think coming out of independence, all of our countries had something going for it, even though we mightn't always acknowledge it. That we had, at that time, leaders and people who were bent on national development, whose purpose was not selfish necessarily. And those people worked towards doing that. And because they were our new leaders, coming from a different dispensation, we gave them a lot of trust. And we let them do what they said they would do. And they did it to a large extent in the beginning. In our case, we had a very good regulator in oil and gas, very good systems, very good people, and we trusted them, and we never questioned them. And in fact, in my early days in the Ministry of Energy, I would hear people, technical people say, you know, this is too complicated. If I explain to the public, they'll misunderstand it, so let's not talk about it. People trusted us. But over time, a few things happened. One, the experienced people left, people with oil company experience. Two, the systems and procedures we had in place were no longer relevant as times had moved on. And three, that communication and connection of the people wasn't there. So when decisions were made in the later days around major natural gas projects and investments, there was never a public discussion. Early on, very early on, from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, we always had public consultation, and I mean public. People will stand, I had to stand up in front of the public in different parts of Trinidad to explain policy, explain strategy, and all public servants had to do that, technocrats. So, and that was common. We did engage. In the very early days, it was in a public square. So we didn't have TV and that's the main change we did of our industry. Later on, when the big project came, we stopped doing that. And the ministry, the regulator, had lost efficiency and capacity. And the government decided to put in place these ad hoc committees who were very bright people who would make decisions, but who had no accountability and who made mistakes. And what they didn't do was to expose those mistakes to their peers or to the government and fix them. They weren't accountable. So they were covering mistakes. Yeah? So that lack of transparency led to deterioration of the governance system, and the companies knew that. And they fed on that. You know, they saw the weak links in the governance system. And the government has not, and to date, the lawyers even don't want to implement things that are required by law, because, and I've seen it, they said it will make them look bad because they didn't do it before. So that and they have so much control. So it's a cultural thing, institutionally, that is enabled by lack of transparency and accountability. So what's happened recently is that we now empowered parliamentary committees, which are never in place, who call the regulators to present and question them in public. And that wasn't part of the process before. Yeah? So, and then even things like implementing the regulations and the laws, a lot were left unimplemented. So there was huge tax avoidance because the mechanism put in place in law had not been used for many, many years. So the companies and the government were just going along without using the proper mechanisms to control. And it turns out that the loss, potential loss between 2011 and 2014 and 15 was $6.5 billion US per year in tax leakage. So it's not insignificant. And the reason for that is that the government was so focused on spending money that was coming in from high prices that it never focused on managing the inflow and keeping that healthy. And when the well ran dry, then they realized you have to fix things. So making sure that all parts of the value chain, what also suffered is resource management. Managing what's below the ground. That's something you have to get very clear to. You say you only have a limited resource. How do you know that? How do you know what the potential is? I can tell you as a geologist and explorationist and production manager that over time, your resource base always increases. Why? Because you will produce more oil as technology improves, as prices change. You will go after smaller pockets once you build the infrastructure. So there's something called a creeping curve. Over time, you find more and more. So what happened in Trinidad's case is that as big oil companies left, the smaller, lower profit margin fields they left behind. We formed a national company to take those over because we had wealth pumping, refineries running. These guys were leaving. So we actually produced a lot more oil that was left behind over time. In Kenya, it's onshore. You can do that very, very easily. So I would say you might create fit-for-purpose companies small enough, or you may find there are bigger reserves. And I don't think Kenya is entirely explored. And I would stop at saying there's no more big fields to be found. I think there might be. I'm a geologist and I understand complexity and uncertainty. So I wouldn't say that's the end of discoveries for Kenya. I wouldn't say you find twice as much. I haven't seen the data. But I would say without that data, don't discount Kenya's future potential. Anything else?
All right. Can we give Antony Paul a round of applause?
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure.
Can we also just appreciate it's not easy moving from country to country to country, training on local content, but certainly we appreciate you coming all this way. And by a show of hands, how many of us feel like when we walked in here we thought we need local content and now we are rethinking? That's the ultimate success, isn't it? Because you come in a certain segment and it depends on where you're from. If you're training, you think you know. If you're a business person, you think you know. I'd like to find out from the room, how many of us are in business? How many are working for ourselves or are in private sector? Very important. If you're in private sector, okay. How many of us have concluded a JV in the sector? You've heard about JV over and over again. I know our lady there from joint venture. Okay. Anyone? So an opportunity right there. Don't let it go to waste. But my point is, we've learned so much, and you've explained wonderfully
both local content, but I think most of us now understand the Trinidad and Tobago flair, for lack of a better word. I mean, if in 1976 you can find that Prime Minister talking about how small as we are, we will start. That is inspirational. And I think it comes down to a question of leadership, as has been mentioned. Comes down to a question of, you've got the right people who want the skills, but without that agenda at the top, then we might be missing out on opportunity. So I'm glad that also finally in your slides, you know, I think people here, my lawyers were losing so much hope, all they kept on seeing was technical skills. Finally we saw where the lawyers come in, so thank you. I've got somebody at lunch who said maybe she's rethinking to become a welder, because clearly that's where the opportunities are. But you've painted a fantastic picture, both in terms of opportunities, but what we need to get there. I was so impressed, ladies and gentlemen. They started out with a Vision 2020 for the energy sector. Do we have that in Kenya? It's some draft that was forgotten in 2015, right? And then they went to add the national vision. We have that. We have Vision 2030. So we missed a step. And then they went to a local content policy. We have that. I see we are working on it. And then now they moved to implementing the vision. So they came from literally newbies in the 70s, and now they're being recognized as an innovation economy. What a wonderful legacy for their children, don't you think? Like a point of pride, I would imagine. And those of us in this room, I'm sure there are many of us who can identify with that. Now my question to us is, what are we going to do about it? Okay, we've got government in this room. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Alan. From National Oil Corporation, we've got private sector, we've got CSOs. How do we work together so we can also move from vision to implementation in a very concrete way, both for the sector but also for the national development? I think that was brilliantly done. So we can't really thank you enough, Antony Paul. But thank you, asante sana. And now we're going to close. I'd like to call upon Ms. Doris Mwirigi, who's going to give the vote of thanks. Doris Mwirigi is going to give the vote of thanks on behalf of the Technical Validation Committee. Remember, we said everything you're seeing here is as a result of the Technical Validation Committee. And on behalf of Strathmore University, asanteni sana. I will see you all tomorrow. Please, all this knowledge you've gotten, Kwanza, if somebody can get that quote, come and ask this government about that quote and what's our vision. But let's have robust conversations tomorrow. All the policy makers will be here wanting to engage with you. Asante sana.
Thank you, Melba. I think I must mention that Tony Paul is working with us as SL. Something is happening to develop the local content policy and review of regulations. So he will be around for the next week, then skip and come again for a week. So if you want another master class, we have him in our offices. So let me just say that I came thinking I know everything about local content, having worked with Tony for the last few months. And I'm challenged again. At some point I want to give up, but I'm challenged to not give up. Let me say a special thank you to the people who made this possible. National Oil, thank you. I see the head of corporate and strategies here, Ken, thank you very much. Oxfam International, Kenya Civil Society Platform on Oil and Gas, and SL Africa, those were the key partners in this. Then a special thank you to the technical committee members who prepared this document and who have sat all this time to come up with this document, who included the partners, the Ministry of Petroleum and Mining, the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Cooperatives, Parliament, Morandat Institute of Oil and Gas, I see Professor there, Kenya Association of KOGA, the Kenya Oil and Gas Association, I see, yes. Suzanne, your name just went off, thank you. She's been very instrumental in this. The Association of Oil and Gas Contractors, who are represented by Mwendia in the technical committee, GIZ, Optisafe, Canco, those were the technical members. A special thank you to everybody who's presented today, including Sahil Shah, who took us through the business cycle, the Kenya business scene. Mwendia Nyaga, who presented the technical paper. A special thank you again to Antony Paul, who's taken us through a master class in local content, and I kept thinking about Melba students who are doing an LLM in oil and gas. How lucky are you to go through this? I did my LLM in oil and gas at Dundee with Yvonne there, and local content was just a subtitle. In any case, you are many international students. How do you get specific? So you're very lucky to get through this, and while he's here, try and get more of him. Thank you again, Tony. Lastly, let me thank the Extractives Baraza, led by the very able. She's been very good, and the team that has made sure every part has been moving. For the last 2 weeks, we've been on your case. Well done, and thank you, team. Thank you, and a very big thank you to everybody who sat through, and thank you for coming. I can't leave without saying a special thanks to the people who've come all the way from Turkana. Thank you, Stella, and your team. Have a good evening, and see you tomorrow. Thank you.
There's tea at the corner. Let me just give me a moment.
This week, essentially, last night, from Dodoma. I spent 2 days with Saturday and Sunday from Dodoma. Right? Tanzania has staff policy.
No, we have to remove banners, no?
All different sectors there.
Let us ask if it's the same one we are using. No, even if they are not, she'll keep them with her. Silvio. Let me ask them first. Yeah.
So what I do, so see, last week I spent 7 days standing teaching for the last 10 days. And then you had a time just flying. Yeah. Forget time difference. I think got time recognized. So after tomorrow, I can then Relax, but this is the one that suffers.